Hello and welcome to a new video. In this video I'm going to be swatching all of my gouache paints into my sketchbook I made. I think it was about over a month ago now. But yeah, I'm pulling out all of the gouache that I have. I have a ton of gouache and I am going to swatch every single color I have just so that I have it as a reference in the back of my sketchbook. And as you can probably tell, my favorite acrylic wash is the Turner brand. I find it very creamy and it doesn't dry out as quickly as the Holbein acrylic wash to me. I don't see a lot of people using Turner versus Holbein. I think they're both fine. I have just become very used to using the Turner brand, and so I have a lot of the big tubes. I have a couple of the Holbein acrylic wash, not a lot of them though. And I also have the Turner Japonesque sets. I started off with that smaller set and then I ended up getting, I think it's 48 colors in total. I can't remember, but I really do need to start using the Japonesque more often. These are all of my Turner acrylic wash tubes laid out. As you can see, I have a ton of them and it's because they're my favorite gouache to work with. So I'm going to start off by using my Turner gouache and swatching out all of the colors into my sketchbook. I like to do this in all my sketchbooks. Here's my last one I just finished. I put down all the colors I currently have in gouache at the very back. That way, whenever I go to like an art store or if I'm just trying to figure out a color palette, it's really easy for me to just see everything together. And I originally was going to show you me swatching every single one of these colors, every single tube of gouache I have, but after I filmed all of that, I realized it was going to be like 7 hours of footage, and I was like, no, that's too long. I don't want to edit all that. So you're getting a very shortened version. I feel like I would just get so bored watching that. I get bored swatching. Like, it's one of my least favorite things to do, but it's very useful for me just so that I have that reference for the colors, especially because gouache tubes, the color on the tube is never really reminiscent of the actual paint inside. I've noticed that being a huge issue for a lot of the Turner gouache. When I would buy new tubes, I would look at like two tubes side by side and the color on the outside was completely different. So having a swatch book really helps with figuring out what type of color palette I want to use and honestly which brand I want to use for that day. I also just find looking at swatch books like this very relaxing, and like I just find like seeing all the colors together, it's just really pretty. I wish I had the patience to do this more often. I want to do swatches of a lot of my oil paint, but just haven't gotten around to it because I just can't force myself into it. So next I'm going to be doing the Japonesque gouache. I haven't used this gouache in a good amount of time. You can see the back has the English name on it, the front is in Japanese. Some of my tubes have become very dry. This beige, it was actually like this when I got this set, which just means I can't really use it that well. It adds a lot of texture, it's just very hard to work with. That's one of the issues with getting a lot of acrylic wash. Over time, they'll start to get very dry and thick and hard to work with, and eventually they'll just become hard inside the tube, like that beige. So it's important to keep your acrylic wash in like a sealed container. So like I put them in Ziploc bags. I also have containers for my artist wash, just to try and keep those from drying out too. It's not the most pretty thing, but it's more important to make sure that your art supplies are workable and last longer. Now, the difference between the Japonesque wash versus the normal acrylic wash, the Japonesque wash has a like sandpapery type texture to them. There's like a grittiness to the paint, and you can feel it when you rub your fingers over the dried paint. The colors are a lot more dull compared to the normal acrylic wash, which is why I have them side by side. I feel like it's a preference type choice. If you like texture and more muted colors, the Japonesque paints might be more of your thing. Next, I'm going to swatch what little paint I have of the Holbein acrylic wash. That's literally all I have. I've only tested a couple of the Holbein paints, and I just didn't really like how they worked compared to the Turner ones. But my plan is to buy some more in the future. I have been eyeing the pastel set for a good while, so I might eventually get that, and who knows, maybe I will like these paints more. There's nothing wrong with the Holbein acrylic wash. I've just had issues where the paint dries very quickly on my palette, and I'm the type of person that just doesn't pour out a lot of paint initially, and so I do little dollops and those dry out like within 10 minutes. Next, I'm going to be swatching out all of my Holbein artist gouache. This is all gouache that's rewettable, and I have both the Iridori sets and just the normal artist gouache. For this swatch book, I'm going to be mixing all of them together. I'm not going to keep the sets separate because I want to see how all the colors relate to one another. These paints took me forever to swatch out. I think it took over a month for me to do this, just because I have so many new artist gouache paints, and I've already swatched out the Iridori sets in a previous video, but just putting them all together was just, it took so much time, and I was trying to make sure I had all of my paint tubes together. I was making sure I wasn't duplicating anything. It was just a lot. Any of the swatches that have a pink line underneath the name, those all come from the Iridori sets. Something I noticed on one of my last trips to Japan, I'm pretty sure all of the Iridori paint tubes come from the sets. So if you get all of the sets, you don't need to buy any more Iridori tubes. You've gotten every single tube that's made. And I say that because in America, the iridori tubes by themselves are super expensive, even compared to the normal Holbein artist gouache. I don't know why, but they just charge a lot more for the iridori ones, even though they're basically the same. I don't notice any difference, and it would just be cheaper to buy them as a set. The next set I'm going to swatch are all of my Winsor and Newton gouache. I don't have too many of these, but I remember really enjoying working with them when I used them in my previous sketchbook. They're a lot more liquidy than the Holbein ones from what I remember, but they layer very, very well. I don't have any complaints really. And next I'm going to be swatching all of my poster color paints together. These will just all go on one page, just because I don't really see much of a difference between the two brands. I have the Holbein and the Sakura poster colors, and I recently just got a new brand which I think is actually a lot better than these. So I plan on doing a video with those new poster colors. And I think these are the last gouache tubes that I swatched. If you've watched some of my previous videos, you know my love-hate relationship with these. These are the Turner Designer Gouache. I don't use these for like anything that I would, sell. I prefer them now for just sketchbook work or playing around. Nothing where I'm actually going to try, really. Yeah, I just didn't like how liquidy these were. The binder separated a lot on them, but I'm growing to like them as just a set to play with. I also made a paint palette with these and I brought them to Japan, but I didn't have time to use them. But I have used them in a different sketchbook. And so here's all the pages swatched out. Some of them obviously don't have too many paints on them. It's just based on which brands and which type of gouache I have more of. Let me know if you have any favorite brands that you like to work with, and if you honestly find swatching helpful for yourself or any paintings you do. I used to not do this, and I feel like I have to now just because it's very helpful for my process. But that's all my gouache tubes swatched out. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!